So this is a new podcast, a new venture for us, would you not say? We're going to talk about a musical. What musical is that, Jen?
Little Shop of Horrors.
When was the first time you encountered this show?
Oh gosh. Probably. Oh, so when we first watched the film many years ago, and then I did the stage production. So it would have been, oh gosh, I don't know. I can't remember what year it was, but it was many years ago.
Okay, so you saw the film before you saw it on stage?
Yes.
Okay, that's probably my fault, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I saw it in a high school 11 or 12 years ago now, I think. So high school production, you know what you're going to expect, in terms of like how good it was. But for me, I kind of fell in love with it instantly. The person who I went to see, they didn't have exactly a huge role in the show, and I had no idea what the story was or anything about it going in. But I saw it and I loved it. And then I think, did you buy me the DVD?
Um. Oh gosh, now you're asking. Maybe. I know I got you Godspell, but I can't remember if I got you Little Shop of Horrors. Um.
Yeah.
But I've.
So somehow we got hold of the DVD, whether you bought it or I bought it. And I think we watched the DVD, and then the theatre group we were both part of at the time, they did it as I think as its first musical in quite a number of years, wasn't it? I don't think they've done any in a while.
It must have been. So it was 2013. I think the last musical they did before that was Honk in 2011.
Okay, ignore everything that I said. Did they do another one? Another musical?
They've done a few musical review shows, but they've
But
not
not
really.
full-on musical.
No, not that I can
Okay.
remember anyway. But yeah, so when we watched the film initially, it was okay. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I don't really remember, like, it didn't stick in my mind because it was the film version. It was only after I did, because I was in the production our theatre group did, so it was only once I'd been a part of the show that it kind of stuck as a show that I would happily go and see several times, or would listen to the soundtrack. I think prior to being in the show, it wasn't something I was ever really interested in.
Didn't tickle your fancy.
No, I remember being absolutely terrified of the dentist after watching the film the first time round, and even rewatching it, those scenes still make me squirm. I'm just thinking about it. Something I always feel is that musicals don't always translate very well onto film. I think there are very few musicals that work in a film environment. I think they should be two separate mediums and kept that way.
So what's a film that you think hasn't translated well?
Oh gosh, where do I begin?
Okay, plenty to pick from.
Les Mis.
I know many people who love that film.
Yeah,
You're going to upset a lot of people.
That's the beauty of, freedom of speech and being able to have different opinions. It's not saying that one person's opinion is wrong. It's just, I don't personally think...
Yours is better.
I just don't personally think that musicals translate very well onto film. The only exception I would say is Grease, but certainly any other musicals, I just cringe at the thought of it.
Is Grease a stage show before it was a film? Did the stage show version come afterwards? Was it written for film first, I mean?
I don't actually know, but it is a stage show. I just don't know which came first, whether it was the film or the stage show. But yeah, I don't know.
I haven't seen Grease. Sorry. But in Grease, is it one of those musicals where the characters where they're not aware that they're singing? Do you know what I mean? Or do they sing on purpose?
It feels more natural. I mean, I would need to rewatch it again to be able to say. Obviously, I'm going from memory. It's been a few years since I watched it. But it feels more natural. It's not like hey, here's a scene, I'm going to say some dialogue. Oh, now I'm going to burst into song and dance. It's not a bit like that.
Yeah, because I know that's something that I think Disney, they've always gone for, because obviously they're musicals, but they are films. But they always go for the singing isn't... the characters aren't aware that they're singing when they sing. It's a natural part of the show or something. And I wonder if that's the difference. What about Mamma Mia? Have you seen that?
I've seen the film, but not the stage show.
Do you think it's a good musical film?
It's a feel-good film. The singing in places can leave little to be desired.
Probably pretty inoffensive given how mainstream it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's taking a lot of the most well-known ABBA songs and plonking them into a storyline. It works. Like, it's not one of those you take seriously. It's not that kind of show. It's very much a stereotypical definition of a jukebox musical. But without seeing the stage show, I can't really say one way or the other based on that. I mean, I'm slightly biased because I do like ABBA's music as well.
It doesn't have to stand up against the stage show, it just does it stand up on its own as a film.
I think the storyline is strong enough to stand up, and I think it is aided by the songs. The fact that you've got things like Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, you've got a lot of their big known hits that appear in the show, and that helps it. But also because it's not, it's a rom-com musical, so it's not anything dealing with a particularly serious subject matter. So you can get away with just sitting there and singing along with it and just not necessarily watching what's on screen.
What is on the opposite end of that is a film that went onto stage. Technically, it's a musical, but it's not a very traditional one. But it is terrible on stage, and that's Shrek.
Yeah. See, again, I've not.
I mean, we haven't seen it.
No.
We can't say it's good or not because of because we've seen the show, but we have seen some clips from it, and it is terrifying. And that's about the nicest thing you can say about it.
Like, I have done, because I did workshops on a Friday night as part of like a theatre class thing. And one of those weeks we looked at a scene from Shrek, the stage version of it. And it's the scene with Farquaad and the gingerbread man with Gingy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is pretty much lifted word for word from the film, from memory at least. This was a few years back now. It's never been a show that I've wanted to go and see. Again, I have a real issue with things that were films then being made into musicals, because it just feels a bit like trying to capitalise on it. Yeah, cash grab. Because I felt the same way when I found out that Frozen, although it's a Disney musical animated film, they've then brought that onto the stage. I mean, the reviews seem to say that it's a very that it's all good, all well and good, but again, it does feel a bit like a cash grab. It's how can we make more money from the Joe Blogs general public? It definitely feels like there is very much a push towards using songs or property that is already well known to people, because it's that bums on seats mentality, and not necessarily enough about producing new works. I mean, the exception to that recently has been Hamilton. Again, they're not. A lot of them are just utilising works from things that are already in the public, so things that people already know, because it's quick and easy. People are familiar with those. You're more likely to get people coming into the theatres, paying the money to see the shows, which you might not necessarily get with new writing.
Yeah, I can imagine if you are playing a part in the Frozen film, you can't do anything to make the character your own. You have to play the character as written on the sheets, because quite often actors will, if you've got two people playing the same role, they might play them slightly differently, and that's fine. Whereas obviously with these Disney properties, it's like you have to play it as written, and you can't change anything. Because it's got to be, the children, they've got to follow along word for word. It's got to be exactly the same, script as it is in the film, so that the kids can follow it along. So I imagine there isn't that same freedom as you might have in a non-Disney or a newly written musical or anything.
Well, yeah, people already they're already familiar with the characters, so they would expect them to be portrayed in a certain way, or behave in a certain way. It's just a lot easier, I think, and that's why there is the rise of things like jukebox musicals, or films being turned into musicals. Say, for example, Dirty Dancing is another one. That was a film in the 80s that was then turned into a musical. Again, not a musical I've actually seen, but again, it's using popular, a film from popular media and then putting that into the musical form. And again, Ghost is another one.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that. Didn't know that was on stage.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, it must have been. I was in college when it came out.
Did you go see it
No, I didn't. Ellie
with
went to see
college?
it. No, Ellie went to see it. So I was familiar enough with the songs. But yeah, no, it's not one I've seen. It would have been quite interesting. A lot of the special effects were really good, apparently. But yeah, again, it's another example of a film in popular culture being turned into another stage show.
So we're primarily talking about the 1986 film Little Show of Horrors, mostly because that's pretty much the only version you're going to be able to go and watch if you wanted to, if you wanted to see what we're talking about. If we were going to talk about our theatre production that we did in 2013, well, you wouldn't be able to go and see that. So it would be a bit unfair to kind of talk about a particular version of Little Shop of Horrors. So it's quite a star. Is it star-studded at this point? I don't know how big they were in their careers. You got, I was about to say Alanis Morissette. No, it's Alan Miak. What's his name? Rick Moranis. I know famous people. We got Rick Moranis, Ellen Green, Steve Martin. We got small roles from John Candy and Bill Murray. I don't recognise any of the other names, but I'm sure they're famous people.
You've also got Levi Stubbs, who voiced the plant.
I'm going to pretend I know who that is.
He was a very, very popular musician back in the day.
As far as musical films go, this is the most musicalist film I've ever seen. I think we were saying just after we watched it, it is basically a play that was filmed.
Yeah, it's very much acted in a way, in a stagey way. So it's very over the top, very dramatic. Oh my gosh, something's about to happen. Oh look, someone's just walked through the door and says exactly the same thing. It's that in that kind of tone. And even like the way it's sung as well, it's very much I'll be standing staring at somebody and then I'm going to turn away and look towards the camera or look over the camera so it looks like I'm staring out over the audience. It is played very much as a stage, as if a stage show was being recorded.
So the musical came out in 1982, so only 4 years before the film. It's quite interesting because we were looking at the way they did some of the props and the backdrops and everything, and it does have a very, I don't want to call it amdram, but it does, they could have gone full theatrical and done things with like huge budgets and big effects and everything. But a little spoiler, Audrey 2 is a puppet throughout the entire film. At certain points we thought, oh, this might be CGI or something, but it's the 80s. CGI wasn't that great at the time. So puppetry was the way they went. Even with the certain parts where the plant grows, that's just done sort of like in camera, as they call it. It's not actually getting bigger. It's just something they're doing with the camera to make it appear like it's growing. It makes it seem very, I don't want to say homegrown, but it does, doesn't it? It's very relatable as people who are involved in amateur dramatics.
Something like, I think I read that it had quite a substantial budget behind it, but from looking at the sets and like the quality of the sets, you wouldn't have thought so.
No.
Especially when it was filmed at Pinewood Studios as well, so it was actually filmed on the soundstage where they filmed the 007 films. But Pinewood Studios is one of the most well-known, recognisable film studios in the UK, if not the world. And yet the quality of the sets, you could tell it was a set, like it wasn't. I mean, a lot of that you have to remember, this was the 80s.
Well, I think what you don't spend on one thing, you can spend on the other.
Yeah.
Does that mean they had a bit more money to have more famous people in it, or they paid a better editor, or the few scenes where they did have CGI, they had a bit more money to pay for that. But none of it detracts from what you're watching.
No, I think obviously, given that we have theatrical backgrounds, it's things we would notice. Certainly when you're studying performing arts, you're taught not just to look at the performance of the actors, but to also look at what's going on around, look at the background extras, look at the set and scenery. You're taught to try and analyze what's going on, so you start to take more notice of things in the background. So they're things that we would notice, but someone who isn't from a theatrical background, who's just watching it as a film goer, as a film fan, they might not necessarily notice those kind of things. It's very quirky, isn't the word? What is it? It's
got a cult following.
It kind of lends its own charm in a way. Like, it sounds like it's not a case of I'm being overly critical and dissing the set guys. They could do a much better job than I ever could. But it's just, obviously, we're looking at it from our modern perspectives where CGI and things like that are prevalent, and there is an expectation on things like sets and backgrounds. We have a certain expectation of them.
Yeah, I mean, if it was on a scale between amateur dramatics and full Hollywood set design, it's way closer to amateur dramatics than it is
like a Marvel film or something.
I was going to go with a film from the 80s,
Well,
I was going to be a bit more. I was going to be a bit kind to the film, but it's closer to amateur dramatics than it is, say, Jurassic Park or something. Because Jurassic Park came out in the 80s, and that was filmed on sets and used a fair amount of puppetry in that. But yeah, like the way it's shot, the color palettes of the whole show, it lends itself to feeling like you're watching a stage musical than a story told through a musical, if that makes sense. Take Les Mis, which it's a musical, but every scene is shot in real life, whereas this is shot on like 5 or 6 different. Is it even 5 or 6? You got the shop, you got the outside, you've got the dentist scene. And that's about it, isn't it? There's about 3 or 4 different sets, and it's all contained within that.
And there's a few other like extra scenes, like you've got the bit in Somewhere That's Green, where Audrey's envisioning what her home would be like, and then there's a few like back alley shots, and obviously like the surrounding areas. But yeah, I think it does lend itself. It's not out of place in the film.
Nope.
But something you could also say is, like, it's supposed to be set in like a downtown Skid Row area. It's a bit scummy. It's not, a high-end part of New York or whatever. It's supposed to be a bit grimy. There are, street urchins, people living on the streets. It does lend itself to that tone, which works in that way. I think also it's a musical that doesn't necessarily take itself too seriously. It's quite out there. It's very off the wall. Like, there is a real suspension of disbelief, which again all plays into the set that would have been used for it.
Just having a look at Skid Row in real life.
It is in New York, isn't it?
It looks like Seattle, Vancouver, Los Angeles, San Fran, Montreal, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Houston. Probably others. They've all got their own version of Skid Row, just where there's a whole load of homeless people.
One of my favourite things about Little Shop of Horrors is the music. I think it is a hugely underrated musical score.
Who wrote it?
Alan Menken, who is mostly of Disney fame. So he did Hunchback of Notre Dame, Pocahontas. I can't remember what else he did. Hold on.
Pulling up his Wikipedia page. So Little Shop of Horrors was only his second musical,
Yeah,
or his second film. Sorry, his second film.
but he's, The Little Mermaid, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Aladdin. So he's got quite and Hercules, that was the other one. So he's got quite he's got quite a prolific record.
I don't think that's a song in Hercules at all.
So he's got quite a prolific history working with Disney, and I absolutely loved the scores in Hunchback of Notre Dame and Pocahontas. There is just some beautiful, beautiful scores in those films. So, and it does echo into Little Shop of Horrors. There are some really wonderful songs. You've obviously got the title track, which when you listen to the lyrics, it's quite a dark song, but it's hidden behind, being a lovely upbeat track. And then obviously you've got Somewhere That's Green, which I was listening to, it must have been sometime last year when I was cleaning the kitchen, and I was listening to the soundtrack, and although I knew obviously what happens at the end, it was only as I was actually listening to the lyrics and I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, she is predicting her own death in a way. It's just very clever how it's all done, and it's such a wonderful score throughout the whole show. The lyrics themselves are quite clever, and then obviously the songs, they're quite recognisable. Once you've listened to them, they can become a bit of an earworm. You can recognise them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite nice when I realised who it was that had written the scores. I was like, okay, it all makes sense now. It's all by the same, he's done other works that I absolutely adore, and he's, when I found out he'd also done the songs for this, I was like, it all makes sense now.
It's quite funny because sometimes you'll start singing some of the songs in public and people are like, what on earth are you singing? And I'm like, it's Little Shop of Horrors. You know Little Shop of Horrors, right? But yeah, some of my favourite songs are happy, cheery songs that have a darker meaning beneath them. That's why I like a lot of 10cc, because the music is upbeat, but if you listen to the words beneath, it's like, oh, that's a bit weird.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a bit down. That's a bit down, bit dark there.
Yeah, it's like the Dentist song. That is.
I am a dentist under success.
Some of those they're very dark lyrics. So, shooting puppies with a BB gun, I'd poison guppies, and when I was done, I'd find a pussycat and bash in its head. They are quite grim lyrics.
That was not a confession. Those are the lyrics from a song.
Yeah, no, I'm not really that sick and twisted, I promise.
Not that sick and twisted.
But it's, it's things like that. It's they're very, very dark lyrics. And when you sit there and think about them, you think, wow, this guy's a dentist. He probably should not be a dentist. He really likes inflicting pain on people. That's not right. It's just very, very clever. The dentist is definitely the reason I am terrified of going to the dentist. And I think Steve Martin is mostly to blame for that. Because even like when we rewatched it this week, and it was like, I knew what was going to happen. And I know realistically, hopefully no one in those scenes were harmed. But it's still like you're going in there with like all these drills and stuff, and he's not giving them anesthetic or anything, and it's just like, oh gosh, and he's like getting high off the laughing gas, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this guy would not be allowed to work if this was set in modern day times.
What do you think of Bill Murray's character? I don't think that character exists in the stage version. Bill Murray plays a character who is the sort of opposite of Orin, who is the dentist. The dentist, he loves inflicting pain. Bill Murray's character loves receiving pain.
According to Wikipedia, he is a hyperactive masochist who visits Orin the dentist for a long, slow root canal.
Yeah, and you can see him, and he's as the dentist pulls out more and more horrifying apparel with spikier and spikier bits on it. And Bill Murray's character just looks like he's going to pass out in sheer joy.
Yeah, it was definitely quite weird to watch.
Something I read on IMDb. This is the only film where Bill Murray and Steve Martin appear together.
I'll be honest, I'm not overly familiar with Bill Murray's work. I know the name, and I know he was in Ghostbusters. Was he in Ghostbusters?
I love that. I know he's in Ghostbusters.
I'm doubting myself here.
Yes, we can tell.
But, like, so when you said, "Oh, that's Bill Murray," I was like, "Who?" I was like, "I don't know who this person is. I recognise the name, but I was like, who? I don't know who that person is." Outing myself as not really a movie person right now. But yeah, I think I read that like he ad-libbed quite a lot in the dentist's chair. I think I read somewhere.
Yeah, I think the lines as he was entering the room were written, but everything else was sort of like between him and Steve Martin.
I have to say, I do take my hat off to Steve Martin for. He really looked like he had a lot of fun playing that role.
Bit different than Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yeah, and like Father of the Bride, it's complete polar opposite. He definitely looked like he had a lot of fun, and like he was quite convincing in that role, because I know there are a lot of people that have said similar to me that like, no, I'm terrified of the dentist after watching that film or seeing that show. And I think that is you know, it reflects well on an actor when they perform a role really, really well, to the point that where people either hate them or they're absolutely terrified of them.
Yeah.
So, but he definitely looked like he had a lot of fun doing that.
It's a bit like what's his face who played Captain America in the TV series, John Walker.
Yeah.
Like he got a lot of hate for it, but the way he was interacting with them on Twitter, he was really enjoying it. I think when people take on board the way you're portraying the character, even if it's a bad character, it can it can really help. Because yeah, it can be. I know he's only the dentist in Little Shop of Horrors, but it can be quite scary putting yourself out there as the on the bad side or the villain or whatever in a film.
Yeah, and I think especially if you play it very well, there's always a danger that you can become typecast as a particular type of character, particularly in film and television, and it can be very hard to break that mold, break that stereotype. But it is good having played characters who, from my own experience, playing characters that are different to how I am as myself. It's quite fun to play the antithesis. It is quite freeing and quite fun just to play something that is completely out there, completely so far removed from yourself. But there is that danger that you can, for professionals, it's obviously, I'm trying to think, like for Steve Martin, like obviously his big name things are Father of the Bride, Cheaper by the Dozen, but he's done so many other films as well. He was the remake of Pink Panther.
Yeah, he was a stand-up comedian. He's a musician. He's done everything. He's written stuff. He's done Broadway.
I do wonder why they cut that other song that the dentist has. It's the gas, I think it's called. I can't remember. It's basically the dentist's death song near the end of Act 1 in the stage show. There's a whole song that he sings in the stage show where like he's dying from the laughing gas. That wasn't included in the film.
There's 2 extra films, isn't there? So maybe that's what gave... Maybe they would rather have some fun now, and that other the other song that they wrote, which I can't remember what it's called. Oh, Mean Green Mother. And this was the song that they kind of... I didn't think there was a song missing.
There were quite a few songs missing.
I just mean in terms of the pacing of the film, I don't feel like the song was missing.
Oh, right, okay. I also wonder if, because the final version that most people would see wasn't the first cut of the film, there were 2 other versions of the film before the final one, and they basically, the test audiences didn't like the more grittier parts of the film, so I wonder if that may have been originally in there but then removed either for pacing reasons or because the test audiences didn't like that. I don't know.
So Rick Moranis as the lead in this film, in this musical, he was pretty good. He's a funny looking fella. No, he is though. And he is in Ghostbusters as well. He really, he really is those characters, but he plays them so well. And I think you were saying about his singing as well. You didn't know he was a singer, and I don't know if he is a singer really. But because I think all the cast sang their own songs, didn't they? They weren't dubbed in, and I don't mean sung on set, but obviously they were tracked, but they sang as themselves. Because Rick Moranis, yeah. Why am I struggling with his name? I keep wanting to call him Alanis Morissette. I don't know where that's coming from.
No, definitely not Alanis Morissette.
But 10,000 Spoons might help you take out an Audrey too. Anyway, Rick Moranis.
Yeah, he plays it very well. He is, when I think of the character of Seymour, he just kind of fits that role. I don't know as I would necessarily be able to see anybody else in that role, but it definitely fits that kind of characterization. Kind of plays it with... It's really interesting, Seymour's development. Like, there is slightly more, like the undertones of it. You've got his battle with, should I, he even says it in one of the songs, should I perform mutilations, essentially killing. He's debating, is it right for me to go around killing people to feed this plant who is demanding, human blood.
He hasn't killed anyone.
No, and this was something I did notice. He didn't actually kill anyone because the dentist killed
he
himself,
asphyxiated himself. Seymour didn't help. He didn't help the situation. He didn't come to his aid. The same in the later scene with Mushnik. He didn't push him into the plant or goad him into the plant or anything, but he didn't tell him to step away from the plant when he knew what the plant was going to do. Yes, he did chop up the body like a crazy axe murderer, but he wasn't the axe murderer.
No. The thing is, as well, like, if we were to put a real world spin on it, he's just chopped up the dentist. People are going to notice that the dentist has gone missing when he doesn't turn up for work tomorrow. Like, that one wasn't really thought through. I know, as we've just said, like, he didn't actually kill him, but...
Yeah, but there was a trail of blood.
Yeah, there was
going the whole way.
Yeah, there's a trail of blood the whole way, and obviously people would have seen him going into the surgery, being in the building before.
Honestly, the fact that the police didn't work out what happened, it shows either A, how bad the police were in that city, or how little they cared about Skid Row.
I guess. And the thing is, as well, like, the dentist is an awful character, like, in terms of like the kind of person he is. He beats women, he goes speeding around on a motorbike. He's I think I said before, I think he was some kind of play on James Dean, who back in the day was like a bad boy rock and roll star, who rode around in a motorbike and played off the bad boy image. And I think I suspect that he is kind of a play off that kind of characterization. But yeah, he's just an awful person. Like, I definitely wouldn't want him as my dentist, full stop.
I am your dentist.
No, you're not. Stay away. But when you really sort of look at those characters and view them as more than just someone singing a song in a musical, he's just an awful character. He really is. Like, he's just a nasty piece of work. Do you remember there's the scene where he puts Audrey 2 in the window, and then you have that person that just comes in going, hey, I've just seen that wonderful plant you've just put in the window, and going on about that.
Yep.
And he goes, well, I'm at it. I'll buy
$50 worth of roses.
Yeah, $50 worth of roses. And I was like, what? That's a lot of roses.
Yeah, especially in the 80s.
Well, it's set in the 60s.
Oh, sorry, yeah, in the 60s.
So I was curious. I wanted to know how much that would be in today's money. So it's roughly $461.15 in today's money. I was like, that's a lot of roses. And didn't he end up like, have you got change for, was it change for 50?
Yes, because they couldn't break 50, so he took $100 worth of roses.
It's just like, okay, because that's musical logic for you. But yeah, I did find that really funny. I was like, that's a lot of roses. What are you going to do with them all?
Right. A dozen roses in 1960 was $7.50. That guy's taking 150 roses.
I think the thing that made it really ridiculous was the fact that, oh, you can't break this amount. Oh, just have to double it then. It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Something I also wondered, and I can't remember very well from the stage script, but I feel like Mushnick treats Seymour and Audrey very differently.
What do you mean?
So, particularly when we first meet Audrey, she obviously comes in, she's been beat around, she's got a black eye and that, and he's very concerned for her well-being. Whereas I've got it in my head that Mushnick, he doesn't really care for Seymour, like the whole point is that he's like considers Seymour a son or something, but he doesn't treat him in that way. He calls him by his surname a lot.
I don't get the impression that Seymour earns any money.
Yeah.
He doesn't get paid.
And it's only when obviously like people start coming to see the Audrey 2, and obviously that's then generating income for the flower shop. It's only then that he would be a bit more favourable in his treatment, but even then not really so. But in the stage show though,
he's not favourable. It's like, oh, this kid is bringing me money, so I better look after the kid just in terms so that he keeps on bringing me money, sort of thing. It's not like he's suddenly in favour with Seymour. It's just he's seeing Seymour as the opportunity and he doesn't want to lose it.
But then it's like in the stage show, I think there's a whole song, Mushnick and Son, where he's like, he says he'll rename the shop or something, Mushnick and Son. But even then, like later on in the film and the stage show, when he's trying to blackmail Seymour because he saw what had happened with Oren, the dentist, and he's like, leave the plant. You can leave, escape town, but you leave the plant with me. And of course, we were all like, no, you don't. You really don't want to do that. That's not a very good idea. And then obviously he ends up getting eaten by the plant anyway. But it was something I noticed. He was obviously very concerned for Audrey's well-being, but wasn't for Seymour in any way, shape or form at all. Something else I did also notice, do you know there's the song Dadu? Or Skadoo? I can't remember what it's not Skadoo. Yeah, it's that one. And I've sung the song and I'd never put two and two together, but basically like when they're going and singing all the harmonies in between the lines, what they're singing matches up with what's actually being spoken in the dialogue. So I think the first time I noticed it, he was going on about where he found the plant. And I think in the film, it was stereotypically something like a Chinese shop or something, or like, it was a Chinese person. But then like when they were singing, they were like, Cheng Da Du. It was just like the words they were singing matched up with what was going on in the scene. It was something I hadn't noticed before, because I was like, why are they saying these really weird words? I don't understand, like, what is the point of it? But then I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. They're actually adding a little bit of an extra layer into that song, helping describe the scene using random words.
Yeah, he sometimes sells me weird and exotic cuttings. Snip, dadu. He didn't have anything unusual there today. Nope. Dadu, so I was just about to, walk on by. Good for you.
Good for you. Yeah.
When suddenly, and without warning, there was this total eclipse of the sun.
Ding.
Oopsie doo. Audrey 2. La 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 doo 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 doo.
There was also, I can't remember where the line came in, but it was one of the lines said was new breed of plant unknown on this planet.
Yeah, I think that was a radio interview, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. Again, that's obviously we as the audience who have seen the show and the film, we know, oh, that is pretty much bang on kind of thing, whereas these characters obviously don't know.
Yeah, it's foreboding for the world, as it was.
There was also a point where we said, like, it reminded us a bit of WandaVision, but I can't remember what section that was. Was that the bit with in Audrey's song, Somewhere
in
That's
her
Green?
Vision, yeah. It's got that kind of perfect rose, the perfect picket fence.
Yeah.
I mean, I say it reminds us of a TV series that came out 40 years later.
It's only because we've seen it recently.
I know.
While we're on the topic of Audrey, I really, really dislike how she's played in the film. So I understand, obviously, it's the stereotype, you know, and when we first watched it, I was very, very irritated by the woman that plays Audrey. And it's obviously only when we've looked into it, when we were obviously researching ahead of this podcast, that I was like, oh, okay, so the woman who plays her originally played her on an off-Broadway production or something.
This is the off-Broadway production. The film version is the same version as the off-Broadway.
Well, either way, she's
that's how they say it on IMDb. That's how they refer to it.
Basically, she plays it. Obviously, she's a stage performer, and it shows in the way that she portrays Audrey. And when I realised that, I was like, okay, I can kind of understand why it's being acted that way. And when you look at the rest of the production, how it is very much performed like a stage show being filmed, it kind of made it a bit easier to bear. But I just remember the first time we watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so annoying, like so overly dramatic, like so over the top. Even like the pronunciation was just over the top. And I just, yeah, it annoyed me. It annoyed me a little bit less once I realised, okay, that was the effect they were going for.
I was going to say, but that is literally the whole point.
Yeah, I know. But it was like the very first time we watched it many years ago, I didn't really understand or appreciate that fact. And I was like, oh, I can't bear to listen to like the film soundtrack because like it's so annoying. It's not easy to sing along with, particularly like Suddenly Seymour. It's not an easy song to sing along with, just because of her style of singing and the way she phrases certain sections of the song. It's not an easy one to follow along with.
She's playing a stereotypical, not a stereotype, she's playing a hyperbolic version of what that person would be in a normal time. Those aren't very great words to say that. She's kind of way out of league for Seymour. She's dating a dentist, and you know, she's got the hair that she does, she looks like she does, and she's all made up, and she's got the language as well. She is that sort of like Barbie-esque sort of character, and then they've just hyperbolaed it in the same way that Seymour is kind of the same but the opposite way. I don't want to say like Beauty and the Beast, but the you know, the nerd and the pretty girl sort of thing, that's what they're kind of going for, and they kind of like push those dials to the extremes.
Yeah. When I think of Audrey's character, like she's obviously on Skid Row. She, you know, so she's working in a flower shop, and she is in an abusive relationship with an absolute sadist, quite frankly. It's really not a pleasant position for her to be in. The thing is, she knows that the relationship isn't good for her. She does know it, but again, it is something that is very prevalent in society today. That, you know, there are still abusive relationships around. That will probably never ever go away, unfortunately. But
she addresses it, you know.
Yeah.
He has money and he has prestige. How can you leave someone who has those two things?
Yeah.
If she was to leave him, she would be the one that was shamed, not him. So she's kind of damned if she stays and damned if she doesn't.
But something that I did find in the staging of the song Skid Row is you've obviously got both Seymour and Audrey walking along, singing their separate parts, but then right at the very end of it, they're obviously slightly cliche how it was done, but they were obviously standing on like the corner of, you know, different corners of the building. It was a case of both of them were singing about wanting the same things. They both wanted to get out of Skid Row.
Yeah.
They both really desperately wanted the same things, but it just felt like they were in a very hopeless situation, which was quite interesting. And it's not something I'd really picked up on. Have obviously sung and listened to those lyrics many, many times, but sometimes it just takes having a visual representation for it to actually hit home. And that was quite clever directing and staging of that particular ending. It really highlighted that they both desperately wanted the same thing, but felt like they would never achieve it any other way.
Do you think at the end of the film, when they're just about to run away, do you think they deserved that ending if it had happened?
As in the film version, the film ending, rather than the stage show.
Oh yeah, I forget. Do you know what I keep forgetting? I was going to talk about that later. I keep forgetting that the film version is happy. In my head, the film version, they die, but they don't. The question is still the same. Do you think they deserve the ending they got? Do you think Seymour deserved the ending he got?
Yes, I think they do, because as we said earlier, on a technicality, Seymour didn't actually kill anyone. On a moral grounds, he was complicit. He didn't do anything to stop those murders from taking place. You know, it was only when Audrey was being attacked that he was like, okay, enough's enough. So it was only when it was really going to affect him on a personal standpoint, you know, affecting the person that he loves, that was when he finally took a stand. You could always argue that one less masochist in the world is not necessarily a bad thing in terms of the dentist, but I think it was a case of he was in the wrong place at the wrong time when the plant turned up. He was just the poor unsuspecting person that ended up with a plant who was intent on mass genocide and wiping out a planet from existence. You know, he didn't necessarily know that was what was going to happen. It was a case of, had he have known, he wouldn't have obviously gone as far as he did. And I think morally, like, he knew what was going on was wrong. And I just think he felt a bit like he had nothing, he couldn't think of anything else he could do. And obviously, he did. In the film version anyway, he killed the plant, supposedly. So he did try to obviously set things straight. Wiping out an entire shop in Skid Row wouldn't go unnoticed. People would start asking questions. But I think they deserved a happy ending. And obviously it's what people want. People want happy endings. They don't necessarily want sad endings.
What was your favourite song in the show?
That's really hard because there are some really awesome songs in general. The title song is probably one of my favourites, just because it's such a fun song to sing, especially when you're in a group of you and you're singing in like 3 and 4 part harmonies. That's always fun. Oh, it's really tough because I like all of the songs.
That's cheating.
I know, it's a cop-out answer. I don't know. See, I don't want to be cliche and just say, oh yes, the title song, because yes, it is one of my favourite songs from the show, but it just feels a bit cliche. Because it's obviously the title song, it's literally the name of the show.
I think The Meek Shall Inherit. Well, actually, no, that's probably low. I don't think that's my favourite. That's probably what I think is the most underrated song. Because like you said, everyone thinks about Little Shop of Horrors, Suddenly Seymour, I Am the Dentist, Mean Green Mother.
Mean Green Mother isn't in the stage show.
Yes, but it's in the show that we're talking about.
Yeah, I know it's in the film, but it's not one that is.
You remember, more people have seen the film than will have seen it on stage.
Probably.
Which is why a lot of stage versions will have Mean Green Mother. Ours did.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't in the show, it was the curtain calls, but that was like a really fun song to do. I think there are so many sections of different songs that I like. Like, there's quite a few songs that have like key changes, or like they'll slow down or they'll speed up, and they are...
There isn't a bad song. There's not a boring song.
The thing is, in the film, the songs are shortened, so you don't get the full song, because The Meek Shall Inherit is a much longer song.
That's because you needed a change character and a scene change.
The Meek Shall Inherit? I don't think so.
I think that was in front of the curtain.
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
I should pull up the show file and see what happened.
It's really tough because there are some really fabulous songs.
Okay, you don't have to pick one.
No, because it's like...
You're just going to pick them all.
Yeah, I'll pick them all. I like them all. Because the thing is, like, a lot of them, having been in the show, there are songs there was parts of songs that I would sing, and I loved each and every bit that I got to sing in, because it was just so much fun. And it is a show that I hold quite fondly, because we had such a wonderful group of people that we performed with, particularly us that were in like the Ronettes, those kind of characters. So most productions, there were only 3. You've got Chiffon, Ronette and Crystal. But we actually had a few extra characters, because there was like I think it was 5 of us, that were in the Ronette. There was 5 of us. and we each had like slightly different ranges. So we had, obviously, we could do like 3-part harmonies in most of the songs, and it was just so much fun, and we all worked together. I genuinely don't think I've been part of a show where I have laughed quite as much as I did during rehearsals for that show. We just laughed non-stop. Yeah, it was just, it's definitely a show that I hold very, very fondly. But it's just, the thing is, like, all the songs were just so much fun to sing, and especially I think harmonies just makes it so much fun. Because because I played one of the Ronettes, when you're like singing in 3-4-part harmonies, it's just so much fun. It just adds an extra depth to the songs. Because I remember Skid Row. I had the opening section in Skid Row. And I remember being absolutely terrified the first time I had to sing it in front of an audience, because I was like, I've got it down absolutely fine in all my rehearsals. And then the first night in front of an audience, I was like, oh man, this is like the next big song after the opening, and it's like an opening solo. I don't want to mess this up. And I think I was fine every single night. I think it was until the last night when I had some friends in on the front row, center of the front row, and I was like, oh gosh, please don't mess this up. I've gotten it right every single night. I don't want to mess this up. I didn't, but I couldn't look into the front row at any point, because I was like, I'm just gonna like lose it. I highly recommend it. If you ever get the chance to do a show, I highly, highly recommend Little Shop of Horrors. It's just so much fun.
And let us know where you're doing it so we can come see it.
Yay! It's just a real shame that I think it is such an underrated show. It's not, when you think of musicals, you don't think of Little Shop of Horrors instantly.
No, I mean, the film itself has done really well by all numbers. And yet when you talk about it with people, a lot of people don't know of it, or they don't know what it is. You're having to explain the musical to them as opposed to just being able to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to explain to somebody, well, it's about a plant that's decided to take over the planet, and decides to eat people and kill everybody. That's the looks you get are quite strange, let's put it that way. When you say it's really good though, as well, that's when they're like, okay, I think you need to go and seek some professional help. It's such a shame, because it is such a wonderful show. And I think as well, something we've briefly mentioned, but we've not really gone into detail on, is the differences between the film version and the stage show. And the biggest difference is the ending. So in the film, it's all happy clappy.
It's very American.
Yeah, it's a very, sickly sweet ending, or so you think, because it turns out there is a little Audrey too growing in the garden. But basically, they live happily ever after kind of ending. But in the stage show, the plant eats everybody and takes over the world.
Well, what happens is the plant tries to eat Audrey. Seymour rescues Audrey, but she is mortally wounded and slowly dies. And she actually says, it's the weirdest line in all of stage history. She's like, "Feed me to your plant. It is my destiny." So, words to that effect. She literally says, you need to feed me to the plant so that you can be famous and everything. He feeds her to the plant, and then he tries to kill the plant with a revolver, and then he kind of like kamikazes into the plant, firing. When I saw the gun in the show, I was like, oh yeah, someone's going to shoot the plant and we're going to see how powerless guns are against the plant. And no one shot the plant, and I was like, oh, there's a missed opportunity there, I thought. Yeah, the plant does eat them both, but it's not like the plant eats them, it's more that they feed themselves to it. Whereas, what you're going to say, the film the original ending of the film is even more different to the stage version. Because the stage version is quite sad, whereas the film, it's not that it's not sad, but it's almost more action based. whereas it's like the end of an action film, whereas the stage version, it's just all very sad and mellow in a way. On stage, I think the last thing in the show is Seymour being eaten and then the curtains draw, and then you hold it for a second, let the audience sort of like digest what's just happened. No pun intended. and then you start with the curtain call or whatever. But yeah, the film is slightly different.
Yeah, it's so it's really funny because obviously Audrey has that line saying "feed me to your plant" or whatever. But then earlier in the show, she sings a song called "Somewhere That's Green" that is basically foretelling her death. She's going somewhere that's green. Plants are green. She's going to be fed to the plant, and it's quite sad when you realise that because like I only realised that upon actually listening to the lyrics in the song and being like, oh wow, she actually is talking about her own death. That's quite dark. And then, yeah, obviously Seymour then decides he's going to try and kill the plant from the inside out, and that doesn't really work. But then the Ronettes come on for the finale, and they're talking about what happens after that. So they then say, obviously, the plants they spread across America, basically "don't feed the plants" kind of thing. That is the name of the song, "Don't Feed the Plants." And it is like a beautiful 3-piece harmony bit of work, which subtly hides the horrors that are erupting, from the words. But yeah, when you showed me that clip from what the original ending of the film version was, I said it reminded me of King Kong. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah. So the film had a $25 million
Dodger.
The film had I haven't had anything to drink except a banana milkshake. The film had a $25 million budget, and $5 million went towards a 10 minutes roughly ending, and it's 4 songs playing out the film, and it's mostly it's 2 plants, but there are other plants emerging and joining the 2. It's like there's like a male and a female plant wandering through the city, but the plants are like 10 stories tall, something like that, and they're sort of like destroying buildings, flattening freeway overpasses, and people are running away. There's no blood or guts or gore or anything, but I think the implication is that there is death and destruction going on right now. And this is the only part, I think, where there was CGI in the film. Lots of puppetry and explosions and big little film framing sort of things going on. And because no one liked it, because the Americans are American, they had to reshoot the ending and do something a bit more mellow. But there was... Originally, they thought that the original film had been lost and they only had the black and white test footage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but in 1992 or 2002 or something like that. It was much more recent. It was like 2012. I think 2012 they found the original footage, so they recut it with the original footage and were able to, and that's that's the clip we saw on YouTube, and we'll have it linked in the description down below for you to watch. And it's just crazy because it's like 4 songs worth of montage of plants coming together and wreaking havoc on a city. We presume it's New York, but it could be any American city really.
So I just read that apparently a remake was rumoured to be in the works.
A remake or a sequel?
A remake.
Right.
With Taron Egerton, so the guy who played Eggsy in Kingsman, as Seymour, and Scarlett Johansson as Audrey. Apparently it was rumoured to be in talks of being remade, but it has been postponed indefinitely.
Oh, that's a shame. I don't know if I'd have liked it though.
Apparently Chris Evans was also in talks to play the dentist. I couldn't see that. I cannot.
I don't know. I know
as an actor you've got to do different things to play different characters and things like that, but I feel like...
blonde hair. I know they have hair dye, I'm just saying.
Hair dye and wig steer.
His face is too friendly.
I feel as well, and this is another rant I'm about to go on, but it feels like
Stop recording.
but it feels like Hollywood has this bee in its bonnet about remaking films rather than making new films. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't touch it. Like, there's nothing wrong with the original. There's no need for a remake.
Yeah, what are they going to bring to a remake? Because, like, the things we said earlier is that this film has a charm because it has quote unquote low budget, despite it being quite high budget, but it's very low budget look. If they bring Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, we're going to be talking about $100 million film, and that's going to have CGI in it, and there's going to be sets in all places. It's not going to be a two-set play or whatever it is. They're going to take all the fun and whim out of it, and it's going to be a straight-edged musical, be like Les Mis.
Yeah, it just feels like it will attract a new legion of fans, because you'll have like the MCU fans and obviously all the fangirls come in to watch it, and it will obviously be using modern techniques and technologies and stuff that weren't used in the original. But I just feel like it's just yet again another way to put out yet another film, and again using the bums on seats technique, using big names, well recognized names. I don't know. I feel like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I've literally only just read about it as well, so I'm like trying to process sort of like what
on the fly.
Yeah. So, like, I think it would be interesting. Like, a small part of me would be like, it would be interesting to see what they do and what it would look like using 21st century techniques and filming techniques and, CGI and stuff. But then it's like, how will it stand up against the 86? Or was it 86? The older version of the film.
It'll be like the Jurassic Park films, where just because you have CGI doesn't mean you're going to do it better. Many people uphold that the original Jurassic Park films look better because they were puppets. And there was another film where people said the same about the originals. Maybe it was the Star Wars, because the prequels were all CGI, that the later 7, 8, 9, there was a mixture of CGI and puppetry to kind of hit the balance between using CGI and try not to overuse it. So what's the next show we're going to talk about?
I don't know. How about Godspell?
Okay. I'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.